Welcome into the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It is me, your host, and then with me, as always, is our Dynasty Captain, Jeff Bell. And then we have brought in a very special guest, Jeremy Pope, and we are talking about shaky Dynasty assets. We're talking about the guys that we've seen the data or a tweet or an article that says this guy could suck for various reasons, and then we ignored it for various other reasons, and now that we're close to week 3 and we're close to the cut date, we're left to sit and stew with our decisions. So let's dive into those decisions, and we'll start with Justin Herbert. And he's a guy we've talked about a couple of times on the show. I don't think any of us are saying that he's garbage, but I do think that it's not just about Justin Herbert. The Chargers as a whole, we've really got to come to realistic expectations of what they're going to be, and especially after the injury. For those of you who watch the Adam Hutchinson podcast, like he has a foot injury that could bother him all year, and when that's the best part of your offense, and your offense isn't very good, you have to wonder what they are. So right now he's Football Guys QB 11. And then on keep trade cut, I think he's the QB 11 as well. Do we think that is the end for him? Like that's the bottom, or do we expect him to fall a little bit further, guys? Because I mean, like I said, I think it's worse than what people think.
I think you're there. So my concern, I think the adjustment already happened. And I was a little bit bullish on where the value was sitting on Herbert to come into the season. One, because I thought his athleticism, we haven't really seen that translate in rushing like he does have that ability to do. Or I thought, a better team, maybe a better, smarter coaching staff maybe would improve some efficiency, because they will throw the ball. They're going to throw the ball more than people realize. But I think when you add the foot injury in, eliminating any mobility this year, plus the narrative that we're walking in, I do think this offense is going to struggle. And so that's where you're starting to snowball things. And that's my biggest concern with Herbert. We've already got negative momentum towards him. And so when there isn't one of those, like either the efficiency or the rushing that can kind of pull him back up into that elite territory, you're just going to be stuck with a tough year.
Yeah. I agree with that. Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, you're good. I have Herbert at 10, so it's kind of in that same real realm there. I think that, like Jeff had said, as far as the overall production from this offense, I think there'll be more passing long term than we expect. This year is a little bit of kind of that down year. We mentioned the injury with the plantar fasciitis, so like that's going to be something that may even linger for him all year, and it might not be a pretty year, but that might open up a window to kind of go ahead and get him on your roster, just because I do think all said and done, a year from now, maybe Lad McConkey hits, maybe Quentin Johnson resurrects his career, maybe we see another receiver added next year, and like this offense will throw. Greg Roman can throw the ball, and he has in the past. They haven't at other times too, because of what they had for assets at the quarterback position and as well as the wide receiver position. So they want to run the ball, but they're gonna have to throw at least enough, and the efficiency numbers, he's going to be a low-end QB1 would be my guess at this point. I think the high-end ceiling we saw a few years ago is probably gone. That's past. It's not going to be there anymore, but still a guy that I'm going to buy the dip on, because I think that there's still quarterback 1 seasons left in Justin Herbert long-term, especially with a guy that has a contract that hasn't pretty secured.
Yeah, and it's like you said, man. Especially with the Greg Roman thing, people always bring up his rushing numbers, and how high rushing volume he normally has, and particularly just how low of a passing volume he has. And you want to compare him to the Ravens, and again, we think about Lamar Jackson and Colin Kaepernick. It's one of those things, like we talk about wide receivers playing different positions. Yes, technically Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert are both what I think are elite quarterbacks. Even we just saw Peyton Manning have both of them as top 5 quarterbacks. They're almost different positions and what they play and how you operate an offense. So to me, that data isn't indicative of what Greg Roman was willing to do with Justin Herbert. And like particularly with I only have one share of Justin Herbert, and with this roster, I haven't made a decision about Justin Herbert, meaning I'm going to panic sell or do anything like that. I took over this orphan and I bought Justin Herbert knowing that around this time I'm going to be making a decision about my entire roster. I'm not going to go trade a Justin Herbert, but I'm not going to go all in. I'm not going to buy old running backs. I'm not going to buy old wide receivers. I'm going to stay young, see what happens, and expect to have a pretty high pick next year. And then again, to piggyback on what you said about McConkey, that's kind of really where I wanted to lead into, and this is a perfect segue into our guy here. Lad McConkey is going right now as wide receiver 31 for Football Guys and wide receiver 30 on Keep Trade Cut. I think that we are expecting too much of him in year one, and I do think that we see that number drop. Jeremy, is that something that you're expecting, giving off what you said?
Yeah, I am at wide receiver 37, so I'm a little bit lower than you guys as well. I think there's a lot of space we filled in with Lad McConkey and his profile as far as like, yeah, he's gonna be really good. Like, yeah, he's a great route runner, which we saw some of at Georgia, but we also didn't see a ton of usage at Georgia. So like, what is his usage at this level? It seems like he's going to be a PPR guy. He's going to have some value there, but I do think this offense this year, you could see a dip in McConkey's value in the offseason. And he's going to be a tough guy that if you want to get out from, it might be now. Like, I know it's early and you don't really know, but if we're thinking, hey, I'm going to draft McConkey and sell him at some point in the near future, maybe now's the time, because I do think that there will be a little bit of a dip, like you mentioned, just because I don't know if the passing volume is going to be here in this offense this year specifically. And if he's really going to be the guy, he's battled with some injuries as well through training camp here. So we've seen where that kind of affects some of the rookie wide receivers and that development to being an early receiver asset. So I'm not sold on him just stepping in and being the guy for this offense. I think Josh Palmer's there. I think there's a lot of other guys in that room that could be at least annoying in the development of Lad McConkey.
Jeff, I know that you thought that Lad McConkey could still be good just because he's clearly the best target earner on that offense right now, even given the caveat that Jeremy said about who he is as a player. But have you kind of tempered your expectations, seeing as like it feels like every report that comes out of there is just negative, man. It's like it's like I imagine being a Chargers fan, you're like doubly sad. You're like, cool, we're in an election cycle, and then my team is just terrible. You know, it's like, why even have a phone? You know, like every time you open it up, it's just depressing.
So we do the preseason updates for Football Guys, and the Chargers are actually one of my teams I cover. Cover the Chargers, the Rams, and the Falcons. So I'm very, very in depth right now on the Chargers, reading everything that's coming out there. It's just so unknown. So early in camp, they had injury problems with J.K. Dobbins. They brought him along slow. Gus Edwards was brought along slow. When they had a healthy Justin Herbert, they were airing it out in every single practice. Now, Justin Herbert's been out for 2 weeks now in a walking boot. Lad McConkey missed a week. And this offense is a mess under Easton Stick. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Easton Stick is going to be the backup quarterback. Like, there was a story coming out of, so in their first preseason game against Seattle, they didn't get a first down until the 7th possession on offense. It tells you how bad that offense is under Easton Stick. And the latest story from the Athletic, Daniel Popper, that covers them, ran through a laundry list of like guys like Tyler Huntley or PJ Walker, or guys that had previous connections with either Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh, or with Greg Roman previously, because it's been that bad under Easton Stick. Today they just cut Max Duggan. Today they signed Luis Perez off of the USFL, I believe, or I don't even know where they got him for sure. So that tells you how bad that everything has been. So it's really tough to say what's actually going on with Justin Herbert, because there's just a lot of unknown. But like I said, early in camp, they were throwing it a lot, which does lead to McConkey. And McConkey was making a difference early. So it's there. But I think you hit on great points there and talking about some of the concerns about what this could be. And again, it's just going back to that Herbert thing, where the general belief about this offense is so negative that if they are negative, it's just going to be double counting on all that.
Yeah, yeah, that's like I made a concerted effort to sell a lot of my rookies this year for like better assets. I'm not, to be honest, I think I'm getting just great deals on them. Like I've sold Lad McConkey in a second for Tank Dell, and I think I might throw Tank Dell on the list. I don't know. Like Tank Dell's one that I've seen some random tweets that he's not on the field all the time on two wide receiver sets and yada yada yada. But it's preseason, and I don't think any of it really matters. And I just think Tank Dell's a good player, and I know he's good, and he has a good quarterback. So if I could take someone that I think is good and go get someone I know is good and still fairly young, I'm gonna go do that. But with that being said, this is why we have the optionality in Dynasty. If you don't get those trades done, you still have someone who has PPR upside. Just understand that if he isn't good and he's getting you 7 or 8 points a game, or if you're not in PPR, realize you're gonna have to be patient with these Chargers. And that's enough on them. I want to talk to you about another disaster team, and that's JJ McCarthy and the Vikings. JJ McCarthy's out. We talked about it briefly last show, but that was kind of a rapid fire, and we didn't kind of talk about things as a whole. So let's just say, yes, this is JJ McCarthy, but really this is a Minnesota Vikings little segment here. Jeff, we'll start with you. Are you worried about JJ McCarthy in the long run? Because I'm not saying that he's Trey Lance, because obviously he has real game time against real opponents and has won at a high level. But in some ways he is kind of like Trey Lance, where yes, he's in a QB friendly system, but it's in one of those systems where they just want a guy to get the ball to their guys. Like it's set up pretty well, and you have Justin Jefferson. It doesn't take Patrick Mahomes to make it hum. And then on top of that, he still needed work. And even before he was injured, he was like fighting for the QB2 spot. And you and I knew he might not start right away, and Darnold might be the guy. Do you think that we're going to see something where we see the Trey Lance kind of pivot? And I'm not saying, Trey Lance where he's at now, but where he was, where he still lost value and people were kind of panic selling.
That only happens if Sam Darnold turns into the guy that went third that people thought were going to go first in draft. I mean, if that happens and Sam Darnold just kind of magically becomes Brock Purdy Sam Darnold, then yeah, maybe there's some concern, because that's going to be hard to go away from if you've got that level of performance. But if this is the see and go Sam Darnold that's turning the ball over, if this turns into a long season for the Vikings, like frankly it should, then I think that just makes everything bullish for JJ McCarthy coming into next year. Between all the pieces, Jordan Addison clears this legal potential issue that he's coming up against. Justin Jefferson obviously has a Justin Jefferson season. Those types of things fall into place. Plus the faith in Kevin O'Connell, the ability to produce that offense. I'm not overly concerned there. I mean, to be real, if Trey Lance hadn't gotten hurt, or if Brock Purdy didn't do what Brock Purdy did, if they still had Jimmy Garoppolo there trying to beat Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, Trey Lance is still the franchise quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers right now. And so that's a tough there. I do think I never understood why there was so extreme difference with the way that Dynasty community treated Michael Penix relative to JJ McCarthy, because the Vikings have been pretty transparent when they drafted McCarthy that they wanted him to sit this year. It's just now we know he's going to sit this year. And if anything, that removed temptation for the Vikings to put him in the game if they are 1-7 or something like that, because their schedule lines up in that direction. That being said, when McCarthy did play, the athleticism showed up, there were flashes, and this is a great support system.
Jeremy, what about you? Are you concerned about JJ McCarthy's value? Is this a clear buy for, like, let's say rebuilders, or really if you have the assets, it's a buy for anybody if you're trying to play ahead of the game?
I feel like the only reason I'm going to say no is because the people that drafted JJ McCarthy are their own JJ McCarthyans, we'll call them.
Yeah.
If they drafted JJ McCarthy, or anybody who believed in JJ McCarthy, there's a lot of pride in saying that you guys are all wrong. This guy's one of the best quarterbacks in this class. So I don't think you'll be able to get him at a discount. Do I worry about JJ McCarthy long term? I think yes, this doesn't change a ton of it. I was kind of in the camp of they didn't want to play him this year because they kind of said that. then they're kind of giving Darnold a lot of opportunity. I think he was forcing their hand because he did look pretty good in those preseason games. And yes, there were the up and downs that you expect from a quarterback that has limited passing attempts coming to the NFL level. But he was forcing their hand a little bit. He looked a lot better and was getting better quicker than I think I even thought that would happen. So there was a push there. And I think the disconnect between Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy was the quarterback in front of him. Like Jeff had said, like in the dynasty community, everybody respects Kirk Cousins. And they're like, Kirk Cousins is legit. Michael Penix is getting on the field. Everybody sees Sam Darnold and they go, that guy can't throw a 5-yard pass. So they're like, JJ's taking his job. So I think that was where that big disconnect came from, which is wild because I think that they're a very similar player. Just McCarthy's younger. He's got the athleticism. I think this is good for him long term. I think he'll be able to sit and truly redshirt the year, kind of learn everything behind the scenes. And the coaching staff wanted JJ McCarthy. They weren't shy about that either. Through the draft process, you knew the Vikings really wanted him, and they're not going to give up on him. So they're going to give him every shot in a quarterback friendly system with a ton of weapons around him. And honestly, this year, if it is a redshirt year, Hockenson will be healthy next year. They can go ahead and maybe add some offensive line help. They can go ahead and add another playmaker and maybe a running back besides Aaron Jones for McCarthy next year, and it'll probably be even better for him. I don't think that it should change your value on him, I guess is where I'm going with it. I think it should just stay the same, and I just don't know if there will really be a window because of who drafted him. I feel like they believe in him.
Yeah, it's like it's a hold then, and that's and it's like you said, I think I have one, maybe two JJ McCarthy shares, and I've been very vocal on this show. Jeff asked too, where I've said that, like, go get Sam Darnold, go get Nick Mullins too, or something. Like, it's, I've been prepared for this. It's kind of like when the Weather Channel tells you that a tornado's coming, and then like when it happens, you're surprised and you're sitting there wondering, why didn't I take shelter? I took it a long time ago. So and one point that you made is like the truthers that do have them, like the and Dynasty's almost like that. Like some of these guys that we say to buy and sell, you always should try. And but realistically, let's say you send out 10 trades, I think maybe only 3 or 4 are going to get done, at the end of the day, because I think that in the other 6 leagues, the person that really values them has already made the effort to go and pay for them. So, still go try though, right? Like, still go try. Don't just say, well, Jagger said I only have this try. No, like that means it's a numbers game. Go send out more trades,
Unless you find that team that was at the back of the draft and like the pool dried up and you're like, they have 3 quarterbacks and super flex and they're like, oh, I could use an asset to win this year. Maybe you could convince someone in that retrospect, but.
So let's pivot to the rest of the team here. And I think we'll be brief on Justin Jefferson before we get to the rest. But no one's saying go sell Justin Jefferson. But for all you savvy people that listen to us, do you think that there's going to be a buy window if, let's say, that the Vikings aren't as good as what people think they are and Sam Darnold really is like Dookie and even worse than like the Pastronaut Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a buy window when the results aren't happening. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen talented players that we know are talented players that are currently in poor situations opens up buy windows. I mean, you look like a player talk about Drake London last year. Everybody was ready to punt Drake London and call him a bust when he was playing with Desmond Ridder. And now all of a sudden, everybody's sleeper this offseason has been Drake London, and you see he's almost a first-round pick in redraft. So that's where, the way that people knee-jerk and how reactive the Dynasty community ends up being when the numbers are not being produced, there's always a buy window.
No. And then we'll go to Jordan Addison. I've never had shares of Jordan Addison, and that's not just because I didn't love him as a prospect. I didn't love him. I liked him as a prospect. I loved Zay Flowers, so I was very vocal about taking Zay Flowers ahead of him. And that's just how that worked out in the rookie draft. And then, like we've been talking about, the Jordan Addison shares that happened last year, especially after we saw Justin Jefferson go down, I couldn't really make any moves for him. Now I'm just kind of okay just not rostering him because it's like strike 5 for me at this point, and I wonder if the Vikings are going to be very good. What is he going to be as a player? And I mean, how bad is it? Because it seems to be like kind of the opposite of Rashi Rice, where like Rashi Rice issues is kind of going away, and then with Jordan Addison, there seems to be something new every week, and these red flag issues have just kind of haunted him since he was in college. Jeremy, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in on buying Jordan Addison in this situation. I've liked Jordan Addison, like you said, a prospect through and through. I really liked what Addison brought to the game. And I think this year is going to be rough. Like if it's Sam Darnold, we're going to be lucky if Justin Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson's going to be able to do it because he's just going to get fed, and it's Jefferson.
Yeah.
But for a player that's Addison's level, which is not Justin Jefferson level, like it's going to be tough when your quarterback plays at subpar levels, and that's likely what we get from Darnold. Maybe he's average, but he's not going to even beat Kirk Cousins. So, is there going to be weeks here and there? Yes. Will there be in the future? More than likely. I think that the best thing in that comparison to Rashee Rice, like Rashee Rice isn't getting suspended this year, but who says he's not next year? Like that's where it's leaning. It's more leaning that he's going to miss 6 or 7 games next year, where Addison may miss some of the time this year, which ultimately isn't the worst case because we already talked about McCarthy not being there. So I think that long term, Addison's still fine. The question is, though, like you have to know what you're getting. Like, are you getting a top 12 guy? Never. Getting a top 24 guy?
Yeah.
Hardly. Like, you're probably getting a wide receiver 3 with some wide receiver 2/1 weeks built into him. But if you are getting him at a discount now and you're not paying that first round pick, you're not paying the premium that he gave us after that touchdown dependent rookie season, like, okay, now it makes sense. This is the perfect guy to get to kind of fill a flex spot, be able to put him in there and be fairly confident that he's going to have some value. Because I think when McCarthy comes, if McCarthy becomes what a lot of people believe he will be, he'll be a viable asset. It's just going to be a weight game with him.
It's a pretty reasonable take because like a lot of people think that Jefferson could be like a top 20 or Addison could be a top 15 asset.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people viewed Addison coming in as an elite wide receiver prospect who went in the first round and then hit as a rookie. And so they know it's a rocky situation. But right now, I think that people are hesitant to sell low unless they're really panicked. But if the numbers really don't start coming in this year, that's where, it starts to be tough of, well, I've got Jordan Addison, but I don't feel like I can put him in my lineup. What else can I do here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's like we talked about it a lot, and I've tweeted about it. Jaden Reed's kind of the same thing. It's just like, yeah, these guys are fine. If I can get them for guys who can be, week in, week out wide receiver 2s with wide receiver 1, output, I'm gonna go do that because I think these guys are just wide receiver 3 and have their most value if you're in a league that starts like 3 wide receivers. Some people still play plain Jane 2-start wide receivers. A lot of people do. So, that's enough on the Vikings. We'll pray for them and we'll keep them in our hearts as they go through a tough year. But we'll go to another team having a tough year, Drake Maye and the Patriots. Drake May's currently going as QB18, keep trade cut, and football guys. We thought he was dead because of Joe Milton for an hour. So now that that's over and he had a pretty decent game and people have come to their senses, and more importantly, Jacoby Brissett hasn't looked, or he has looked like Jacoby Brissett. Do we think that Drake Maye is like kind of a let's buy right now type thing, even if you're a contender, because he has a rushing upside and, at least we hope it's going to be a better offense, Jeff?
I would buy him if I can. I do think that while Brissett has struggled, they're not going to put Maye in unless they feel like they can protect him. I do believe that. I think the way the coaching staff has been in the organization. So that's where, if he does play, I feel good about how they feel he's going to play. But I would buy him right now if that opportunity is open.
Yeah, and it's like you hit it on there. I mean, like I'm wearing a Teddy Bruschi jersey right now. I'm a Patriots fan, and like what's going to stop this offense is the offensive line. Like the whole team. Defense will still be pretty decent even without Judon, but that offensive line is abysmal. If David Andrews goes down, it's bad news. Like we basically don't have a backup center, and that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. Offensive linemen they're like running backs. They don't tend to play 17 games a season, and having someone who could play center is incredibly important. So it'd make a lot of sense. Don't let him get hurt. Maybe have him able to play a couple of games at the tail end, but throw him out there to the Wolves. And let's say it's not even just injury, but if you don't have an offensive line, you're just gonna have a bad time. Half of Bryce Young's problem wasn't just play calling and not having support from, playmakers. It wasn't having support from that offensive line as well. So definitely concerned. Jeremy, we'll give it to you. Do you and I guess like Drake May, at least I think he's good. Are you one of those people who think he's bad? If you think he's bad, explain on that. But if you think he's good, we'll move on to the rest of the pass catchers. Do you think the rest of the pass catchers have value if Drake May is, let's say, a starter earlier or sooner than later?
I'm a Drake May stan. I had
Thank
him
you.
as the quarterback 2 in this class long term. I think that if the development happens and if the Patriots do it smartly, he will be better long term than Jaden Daniels, as much as we love Jaden Daniels' rushing upside. But different day. We could talk about the pass catchers because you want to move on to that. Let's talk about them. I think that there is viability here. I think the issue is like it's going to be week in and week out of a guessing game, a little bit of a headache. As much as we want to crown Javon Baker looking great in preseason and in training camp, his style of play lends to that. He's kind of a separator. He's a one-on-one winner, and that's what you're going to see a lot of the highlights from training camp. You'll see those guys are the guys that you tend to see flash because it's easier one-on-one in training camp when you're lined up against them as opposed to facing the full defense and as the game progresses through a play. So I think there's good things we've seen from Javon Baker. Then there's also good things we've seen from Polk. There's also bad things we've seen from Polk. And the main issue I have still is Polk and Baker are running behind like KJ Osborne, like Tyquan Thornton's running in there a little bit. Like they're not really separated themselves as much as I think we would like. And whether that's just the coaching staff being a little bit more in the vintage category where like they're giving Brissett like a sacrificial season to help Maye's success. Maybe they're doing the same at the receiver position. So is there viability here, even with Drake May starting, say, half the season? Potentially. But I think either way, you're still going to be playing a lot of guessing games because his offense just won't be that good. Even with May in it this year, like you'll maybe have some viability, but like how much? Like you're talking like wide receiver 3, maybe. You're hoping for like Commanders last year. That's kind of where you're at.
Yeah,
So it's not great. Let's put it that way.
and from what I've heard, basically the only one that you want for this year is like Demario Douglas, just Pop
Hmm.
Douglas. Maybe Hunter Henry is like a Kate Otten type where he's gets you like 8 or 9 points, and then if he falls in for a touchdown, like I think the offense is gonna be better, but like it was bad. Like better is like not a high bar, guys. Like I mean, it's like I think we're coming out of the basement and now we're at the floor. Let's put it that way. So
Like
like
5 steps up the basement steps, not full.
exactly, exactly, yeah. So it's I'm and I guess if like I still cared about Best Ball Mania and stuff like that and was still in that mindset, I would like regret some Jalen Polk and like Pop Douglas. I think is the guy, and he's someone that in fantasy that I think that not enough people are really valuing because he's so incredibly cheap. And now I'm going to put him on the next show sheet. So
Yeah.
let's take a mental note, Jag. Okay.
Yeah. No, I
um,
completely agree. That's where I am too. Pop Douglas is the one that you want. And they remind me a lot of the Giants prior to adding Malik
mm,
Neighbors, where you're like Pop Douglas is kind of that Wandale Robinson where he could just eat in PPR. And then I think Polk is really just a wide receiver 2-ish long term. He's not gonna
Jordan
be a wide
Addison
receiver
at
1.
best.
Yeah, well, even at best. And so that's where you look at this team long term. If they're able to add a Luther Burden or a Tet McMillan into this lineup, then suddenly things make a lot of sense. Or they really need Javon Baker to hit in a big way for the wide receiver core to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think they'll
Like
have
if
an
we were.
interesting, like, they'll be an interesting team come draft season,
Mhm.
like where they fall. And if like Luther Burden and like Tatoria McMillan hit to the point of where like, okay, we're talking top 10 draft capital, like, does New England go offensive line and help themselves, or do they go with the fancy receiver and hope for a better playmaker in that aspect? But
Yeah, I definitely think that like just how this team is built, if we would have got Brandon Ayuk, I think they would have like maybe kept Matt Judon, done some other things because they're like, okay, this is a receiving core,
Mhm.
and then like maybe we can even trade for some O line depth like the Jaguars sort of did at the end of last season or something like that. But like not getting Brandon Ayuk, kind of dictates what they're going to do going forward because like we're not going to put Drake May out there without a wide receiver one and no offensive line, maybe one or the other, but like definitely not both. So like
They
it
could be in a
makes a
T
lot of.
Higgins.
I was gonna say T Higgins out there.
Oh man, yeah. Like if don't get me excited,
He's
we got
not
to
getting
move
paid
on.
in Cincy. I'm just saying.
No, he won't.
They
They
will be
can't
a
afford
favorite
it.
spot. A lot of cap. Then they could go offensive line in the draft. Make a lot of sense.
They're trying to recreate him in the aggregate. I think Jermaine Burton and Andre Yoshevich can be like Tyler Boyd and T Higgins together. Like if that makes sense. Like together, I think that they could be productive, or especially with like Chase Brown if he develops a little bit more as a pass catcher. But like. T. Higgins would be great, and that's why I think Luther Burden wouldn't be the guy, because we have enough guys who can live closer to the line of scrimmage. We need someone that is a little bit bigger, has more size, and can go deep. So it's like that's nothing against Luther Burden as a player. I just don't want that for Luther Burden, and I don't want that for the Patriots. Like, go get someone that isn't redundant. It's like those NBA teams. It's like, okay, you're gonna roll out 6 point guards, and you wonder why your rebounding is so bad. All right, we're gonna go to another rookie here, and it's crazy. I guess not really that he's here, but is Trey Benson in shaky territory? We'll start there, Jeremy, because like this has been a roller coaster 2 weeks for Trey Benson. Because like as someone who's a film watcher, like Jeff is too, he objectively looked bad his first preseason game, and we still saw some of that stuff. And like Jeff, you said in group chats, and I've seen it where he has a lot of pitter patter in his game. He does small boy stuff. We saw a little bit of that, but we saw a little bit, him taking holes and feeling more comfortable. So do you think Trey Benson is shaky? Like Tank Bigsby has messed me up a little bit. I've got trust issues, as Drake would say.
Tank Bigsby hasn't messed me up too much. Give him time. Give him this
Mm-hmm.
year. All right. But I think with Trey Benson, when you watched his tape at Florida State, it was much of the similarities. Year one, yes, he was explosive, had some great plays, but he had the pitter patter. He was very indecisive. He didn't want to hit certain holes that were there. And you were kind of like, eh. Then he was overrunning holes, running into linemen. Like it was very indecisive and very like one play it's great, one play it's not. And I think we saw that get better in his second season at Florida State. Not crazily better, but better. We saw improvement. So I think for us, Trey Benson's a long-term guy. Like, yes, it's the first couple weeks aren't going to look great. We saw that adjustment, like I said, in those first couple seasons at Florida State. Like, he wasn't fully there yet. And I still think he isn't fully there. So it is a little bit of a long game with Trey Benson. I don't think the Cardinals expected him to come in and be a viable asset for them this season. I think it's okay if, Connor gets hurt, we'll fill in with Benson and somebody else. But it's not going to be, okay, now Trey Benson, here you go. Here's 25 touches a game. Like, they're not going to do that. I think Trey Benson's a long-term guy. I think if you can buy the dip, it's good. Is there a chance that he becomes like Kendre Miller or Tank Bigsby? Like, yeah, for sure. There is that potential. And I think that's any potential with any rookie running back. But I think we have to give him time. I think we saw a little bit of improvement in week 2. And I think it's just going to take him, a little bit to get used to the speed of the game. Everybody moves a little bit quicker. Give him a year. And I think we'll talk about him next offseason a little bit differently when we get to see some more of him in game action.
Jeff?
I think you're running into a knee-jerk reaction right now because when he was drafted, everybody looked at it as, oh, well, James Conner's old and boring, and it's Dynasty brain and exciting rookie, and he's just going to put him on the bench and roll with it. But I think the reality of it is the Cardinals view it as you're our long-term back, and we have a great short-term back that we really like a lot. Plus, they are going to play Imari DiMercado or Michael Carter as the passing down back. And I don't know if people have understood that yet. And maybe that might be a bad week 1 reveal for some people. But I think that's as well. And there's just been this mentality, I think, in the Dynasty community of, well, James Conner is always hurt and boring and old, and I don't want him on my team. And so Trey Benson is going to be the dude. And when it doesn't happen immediately, because the team never was planning on it happening immediately, people freak out.
And I have Trey Benson as an RB2 on a lot of my dynasty teams, but again, as our long-term viewers know, I build my rosters from that. Like I'm not even like I have a buff wide. If not one, I have two buff wide receivers, a third one that's really good, and a good tight end. Like I'm optimized to do that. Like if you're rolling out with like Devontae Adams as your wide receiver one, then like you shouldn't depend on Trey Benson because you probably got problems there, and that's where we get in the roster construction. And it's funny, Jeff, I've waited a long time to say this, but I've read an article that should be coming out soon, and I had Trey Benson as like one of my rebuild buy targets, like Tajay Spears, Trey Benson, and Dylan Laube. Those are three guys that no matter what happens, I think you should be aggressive on buying them this year and buying them early. Because like you said, Trey Benson might be a slow start, but I viewed him in his tape like Braylon Allen, where he had a lot of pitter patter, but it wasn't like he consistently did small boy stuff. Like I saw him run over people, and it's like we even saw in the preseason game, when he gets rolling and makes a decision, he looks good. So it's like he just needs a coach to like recreate that, because it is like, as much as we saw the pitter patter on his tape, what does he do well? When he does get going, he's pretty unstoppable, and he has a lot of athleticism, so he just needs to go. Just like someone needs to tell him, like, bro, you're 220, just like run, just anywhere, just forward.
And he doesn't have a lot of carries even at the collegiate level, because he's really only played 2 full seasons.
And he bounced
He's
around.
had some injury issues. He was over at Oregon, then came over to Florida State, and split touches at Florida State. So, like, again, it's just a guy it's going to take a little bit of time. Like you said, like, once he gets going and he sees the hole, and that's what the Dynasty guys love. Like, that's what we're seeing. Like, those highlights of him ripping off a 50-yard run and then running somebody over and then taking it for another 5. Like, he has that upside. It's going to be just, we have to be patient, like Jeff said, like, the team wasn't planning on starting him, so why are we?
Yeah, because like James Conner still got enough left in the tank, and like Imani DeMarcado is decent. Apparently, I never can tell if Michael Carter's dead or not, because like I still have love for him. I still have love.
I'd want to go like Dallas. Like, can we get him? Like, I'd rather him just get cut and like end up somewhere that maybe there's some viability.
Yeah, or just retire. Like, I don't want to think about you anymore. Is my thing. Like, I just don't want to think about him anymore.
No lie, this is like off topic side note, but I'll be quick, I swear. Watching the Bills game, all of a sudden I saw the Steelers, and I was watching the Steelers game, and obviously with the Bills game, and like I saw P. Ryan in the backfield, and I saw take a run, and I go, there's no way that's LaMichael P. Ryan. And I like looked, and I was like, holy crap, it's LaMichael P. Ryan. I forgot about him. Like, I was really high on him like 8 years ago.
It's like Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick, you guys forced me to cut him because I had him on every IR ever. And now it's just like after a rookie draft, and I'm like, who should I cut? And I'm like, I guess it's time to cut Tim Patrick. And now he's a thing.
Now
again.
It's the year.
I've long been a driver of the Tim Patrick is a good football player bus, and I'm excited for him now.
Tim Patrick truthers, stand up. All right. We're talking about Tim Patrick. We better move on.
Michael P.
Zamir
Ryan,
White.
Tim Patrick. People are changing the channel now.
That's next episode with John Bosch. It's like half deep cuts, and I changed mine. So I changed my guys so it wasn't like all deep cuts. But Zamir White, speaking of a deep cut, he was like a last year or 2 year ago deep cut that is raised from the dead. But is it real? Like, and let's just put it this way: critics say no. It's not real. I've been telling you that you should sell him no matter what, even if you're a contender. Just try. If you can go get Trey Benson, like we talked about, go and do it. He's as Dameon Pierce as they get, and it's even worse. He's like old Dameon Pierce. And Jeremy, Jeff, before I kick it to you, I'm sure we all saw the PFF tweet. The best fantasy finishes by non-rookie running backs to play in the second half of the second preseason game since 2021. Devontae Freeman is the best finish at RB31. Then it's all the way down to RB52 to Rex Burkhead, Deion Jackson, Deontay Foreman, Jermichael Hasty. It's pretty bad. And again, I don't know this. It's technically data, but it's a little bit narrative based data. I feel like a little bit. Jeff, do you think this is some of Antonio Pierce just like doing things differently, or do you think that this holds water?
Are the Raiders well run offensively? I feel like would be my primary question, and that's we've said it. We go back to our show with Heath Cummings a couple months ago. I said I listed Zamir White as the guy you got to sell right now. That he was holding Dynasty top 20 running back value at that time. I said, get out now. What are you doing? Because I think the narrative and our thoughts around him are Alexander Madison is awful. We saw that, and Dylan Lobby is a late round rookie. So it's going to be a bell cow because that's what it was last year. And it's not going to be a bell cow because Luke Getsy is running the offense and they can't run the ball.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that. Like, as you guys know now, I always give you the football guys ranking, consensus ranking, and then I give you keep trade cut. And most of the time, those are pretty even. Like Justin Herbert's the same. Lad McConkey's one off. Zamir White, football guys, we have him at RB32. Keep trade cut is RB22. And I think RB32 right now is because some guys need to update their rankings. You know, like everyone's just kind of waking up. Yeah, exactly. I was like, it's not me that has him that high. So it's pretty scary. And like, again, I think he might have early value, but that's fake, guys. That's fake love. As again, I just can't stop quoting Drake. Jeremy, where are you on the Zamir White conundrum?
I mean, I have him at 30, so like I'm in the wheelhouse there. Um, I liked Zamir White. I did as a prospect. Do I think he can be this elite fantasy asset this year? Kinda, as in like a volume based, but like it's not going to be there long term. Like this running back class that's coming out is going to be very good,
So good,
and they will replace him 100%. So I'm even on the campaign that like even though Alexander Madison's bad, like he's probably their third down guy, if not Dylan Luby. So like, what is Zamir White? You know, is he an early down grinder, touchdown dependent on an offense that likely scores, you know, bottom half touchdown numbers? So like, what is our allure here? Like, who says he's not just like trying to think of someone like that was last year that didn't really hit the number? Let me look quick here. Like Brian Robinson Jr. Like, is that his upside? You know, is he like, oh, Robinson Jr. was good last year. Brian Robinson rookie year, or Antonio Gibson. You know what I mean? Like these guys that really like there was some hype, but like he didn't really get there, and he was kind of a running back 2, running back 3, and then long term there's nothing there. Like Devin Singletary probably a good career path. Like there's some volume there, and then he's decent, but like never really gets going. So I think if you have that keep trade cut at 22, like you're talking about guys you could probably get him for Brian Robinson Jr. I'd rather have him.
Yeah.
David Montgomery, I'd probably rather have him. Trey Benson, Javonte Williams, I'd definitely have over him. You know, like DeAndre Swift, probably a guy that's relatively near him. I'd rather have DeAndre Swift. Like, so there's a lot of guys that take over him. And I guess if I was maybe a contender, I'd hold on to him because my investment cost probably isn't there. And unless somebody was coming up to the plate to pay top 20 number value, then maybe I would move on. But if that value is not there, I'm not just getting rid of him, I guess is where I'm at.
He's one of these guys that he's going to be 25 when the season starts. And I think he's one of these guys that people think he's 22 because he didn't do anything until like there's these random guys that their age doesn't line up with their actual age. And I mean, he's not that much younger than like a Tony Pollard. And I feel like the upside is so much higher on Tony Pollard. Can you flip Zamir White for Tony Pollard plus because people view it as selling a young running back for an old running back?
Yeah, Tony Pollard. Yeah, Tony Pollard's went from he's went from a sale to a hold because I'm like, well, he's so cheap now that like, you know, like he's almost buy territory. It's like, why not? The team said that he's like the 1A and they're going to use him. So, you know, that's like you said with the upside. But back to Zamir White, man, I was kind of thinking like like Jeremy, you brought up a good question. You're like, what is he? Is he this team's Malcolm Brown? Where like the Rams liked Malcolm Brown, like wildly obsessed with Malcolm Brown. He doesn't fumble and he's a good pass blocker.
Daryl
That's-
And
Henderson.
Jarvis Green Ellis.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a glorified tight end, essentially out there.
He's
You
he's
know?
the Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. You know this,
Yeah.
and you've got Dylan
Yeah.
Lobby as the James White and catching
Yeah.
dump offs from Gardner Minshew, and
Mm.
Lobby's gonna be this garbage time dude that's gonna put up 13 PPR points, and then White is gonna have his 13 to 17 carries for 48 yards, and you're praying for a touchdown. Otherwise, you're staring at 6 points in your lineup and saying, "What am I doing right now?"
Mhm. And that's what, like, when I always tell people Dylan Lauby's a buy, we're buying to sell, probably, is what I'm saying. It's like his value's going to go up, and people are like, well, he's the guy. You don't want any of these Raiders right now. Like, you just don't want low draft capital guys. Could he be something? Sure, but, like, I don't know if Antonio Pierce is going to be there next year. And then, like Jeremy brought up, the running back class, let's say if we love the Bijan Jameer class, that was kind of shallow, where it was top heavy and then everything else was a quagmire. This next class is stacked, guys. It's much different talent level than what we've seen before. It's, kind of reverse of what this year was with wide receivers. So that's enough Zamir White, guys. We've told you the ball's in your court now, as they say. You could keep hanging on to him. And I know you guys are, because you're yelling at me in the comments. You're like, well, Zamir White did this in 4 games that didn't matter, and one of them was against the Chargers. So it's just like...
Chargers are a good defense.
Okay. That's good sarcasm. You're gonna make me spit in my mic, Jeremy. Cut that out. We're going to move to another shaky asset, my favorite, and I've done really well not talking about him, Justin Fields. It's time, guys. This could be one of those things where the Steelers just still suck, and then maybe Mike Tomlin is just done. He's just kind of done running a good organization, and this is his last straw. And maybe, as Jeff said it, maybe like you were saying, Arthur Smith just kind of sucks. He just had AJ Brown and Derrick Henry at the right time. That could be an issue here. But Justin Fields looks much better than Russell Wilson. Do we think that he has any long-term value here? Do we still think this is a red shirt and then Russell Wilson's going to die for who sins? I don't feel like the Steelers have that luxury to be in that mode anymore. Jeremy, we'll start with you.
I don't think Justin Fields has looked that much better than Russell Wilson. I think we just haven't seen Russell Wilson. I think Justin Fields against the Bills looked a little bit more Justin Fields-esque. I think that
That's good or bad.
Long-term Fields will prove who he is, and he has already done that in Chicago. Whether that was the coaching staff ruining Justin Fields, because I did like Fields coming out, or it's just Justin Fields continuing to not develop as a passer and processor. We know the athletic abilities there, but I think he's closer to that Trey Lance comment you made earlier. Like, I don't think it's here. It just is what it is. I think he's done. I think maybe Pittsburgh gives him an option. If he's in the game, he's going to get us fantasy points. So yes, there's maybe some value to hold on to him. Am I blatantly cutting him? No, just because of that dual threat upside and the issue that he's in right now. Like, if the Steelers get bad, do they feel it out and say, hey, can he be a guy? But I think they're already leaning towards Russell Wilson. I think they're going to let Russell Wilson, quote unquote, cook. And whether that's good or bad for the Steelers, I don't know. But I do think that for Fields' outlook, I'm pretty much done with him. I don't think that it's going to happen. We don't see it often that these quarterbacks, once they start bouncing around, really hit again. Yes, we can point to Geno Smith. We can point to a few other guys that had Baker Mayfield, had some late career, not even late, but mid to late career success. But again, now Geno Smith's at the bottom half. Nobody really respects what Baker did last year. So, I think it's pretty much done for Justin Fields at this point.
Yeah, I've guys, I'll apologize right here on the show. I've been one of the biggest Justin Fields guys ever. What I hope is that Justin Fields takes over so I could sell him. Because I don't just think that Justin Fields isn't that good. I just think the Steelers suck. I think George Pickens is a better wide receiver 2 than he is a wide receiver 1. If George Pickens was as good as everyone said he was, I don't think the Steelers would have been that aggressive to get a wide receiver as they were in the first round. That's already came out. They've been trying to get Ayuk for a long time. I think that Roman Wilson was settling because wide receiver kind of dried up. like Jalen Polk, all like basically it dried up pretty quick early. Like we had a lot of wide receivers go, but no one has been like real difference makers. That offensive line could still be doo doo because they still have Pat Fryermuth blocking 40% of the time. It just maybe they're just not good, man. The Steelers just suck. They all suck. Mike Tomlin sucks. Arthur Smith sucks. George Pickens is mid. Like that is I'm not trying to say this as a mean. It is greater than a non-zero chance that this whole roster, besides defense, is just doo doo. Jeff, am I being bleak?
I think a little bit. The problem. Every quarterback is a system quarterback, and the problem with Justin Fields is the system that he needs is so extreme for NFL mindsets that it's just hard to find somebody willing to actually make that investment and put him into that system. And so that's why I think we saw diminished trade value when they were trying to trade him or trying to find somewhere to land him, because Gardner Minshew is going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Daniel Jones is $100 million man. You're telling me that I still believe that Justin Fields is one of the 32 best options to be a quarterback weekly for an NFL team. The problem is I don't know that an NFL franchise is willing to manipulate themselves enough to make Justin Fields one of the 32 best options for an NFL team.
And he's in a situation in an offensive coordinator that's not going to do it either.
Yeah,
like Arthur Smith's not going to bend his system to his skill set. Now he fits Arthur Smith's skill set a little bit. Like we've seen Smith wanted a running quarterback, so maybe there's a little bleak hope. But like Jeff said, unless somebody decides that they want to go to like an RPO, like one read, kind of read half the field and then run, like it's just not going to work for Justin Fields.
Well, and I think the problem is that when Luke Getsy came in, they tried to change him so much from, instead of being like, this is who you are, let's make it work around you. They tried to say, this is how you have to play NFL quarterback. And that is bad coaching to me. And that's where I think Justin Fields is thinking too much. And I know that the Steelers are trying to get back to, well, this is the way you played at Ohio State. Like this is your natural way of playing. But it's kind of one of those things of you screwed up a guy's head to the point that you're trying to unscrew it. It's still a screwed up head.
Yeah, it's like Mac Jones. Like I tell everyone, I'm like, Mac Jones was a good quarterback. He was a good quarterback. And then Bill Belichick broke him. Like
Matt Patricia broke him.
Yeah, Matt, exactly. Like they just broke it, man. It happens. Unfortunately, quarterback is a very mental game, and we see this happen a lot. We're like, what? I think Derek Carr is one where that dude was magic his rookie year, and after he got injured, he was never the same. He had happy feet. He was just a scared player. Even in my brief career, I've seen it, and I know, like, someone like Jeff, you're older than me, like, you've seen this happen with players in several sports, that something happens and they're never never the same again. It's like what is it in the MCU, like a Nexus event. Like, once that happens, it's effed, like, I can't curse, but that's...
I'm going to hit Jeff's heartstrings with this one. Trent Edwards.
Yeah. He took that one hit. That one hit just ended his career. I mean, he was on a developmental path, and he took that. Adrian Wilson broke his jaw essentially, or broke his face more or less, and he's never the same player again.
Yep. Well, we'll finish up with our last guy, and again, this is kind of these last two is a tour of Jack's favorites that dug a hole out in the back, and I put a treat in the bottom of the hole, and I'm whistling for him to come get in because I got to put a bullet in their head. It's Jahan Dotson. I joke a little bit. I don't get Jahan Dotson as a player, and at this point, I'm just seeing what happens. It's not good. I have so much that says he's a good player. I've done this long enough and talked to enough people long enough that my eyes are pretty good. I know what a good receiver looks like, and Jahan Dotson is one of them, but he just can't seem to get it going. Last year, I think it was multiple things. It's not on him, but now we have Lane Kiffin coming in, and it's just all bad, and I'm down bad. Jeremy, where are you at on Jahan Dotson?
I'm kind of in-ish. I think just at his price points, like,
yep.
I also, the issue is like the reports aren't great so far. They haven't been very glowing, but the opportunity's there. I think that's where I'm in still. Like, we saw a little bit of the flash. We saw it at Penn State. We saw him do it at the NFL level. Very that kind of quick separator, very good in the red zone in that aspect. And I think this offense could be better. I think Jaden Daniels fits him pretty well, as well as Terry McLaurin. So I have hope, I guess, is where I'm at. And I think he's affordable to where I'm willing to take a couple shots on him. So I'm not ready to give up just yet. But I'm definitely a depreciated value in it, and like being real with it. Like, am I expecting it to 100% hit? No. Is it like 50-50? 100%. Like, I'm like 50-50. Like, I'm not loving it. Like, I'm not all in, but I'm definitely playing the hand out here and seeing what we get. And maybe it is something good. We've seen it. Like I said, there's been that proven upside there, and in maybe a little bit more friendly system, he can put it all together. And it's really in his shoulders at this point. The ball's in his court as far as just showing the Commanders what he has, because there isn't much competition in that room. So I'm still in. I think he's a very cheap option for a potential wide receiver 2 on his offense, wide receiver 3 type of production. And like you said, yes, and maybe some of those shallower leagues, you only start 2 in a flex. Like, maybe he's not a super great option for you. There's plenty of leagues out there nowadays. Everybody's trying to get deeper and deeper. It's 3 wide receivers, 3 flex. Like, those teams, like, he's definitely still viable, I think.
Yeah. And it's like you said, he's so cheap now that, like, what am I selling him for? You know, and let's say worst case scenario happens and he doesn't make up the roster. I think a team is going to pick him up. Like, again, I'm being a Patriots homer. I'm like, you know, we hope Javon Baker is Jahan Dotson. Let's put it that way. Like, that's what we hope that he is as a player. You know, the similar profiles. These are big play deep threats that, you know, maybe aren't going to break a whole lot of tackles or whatnot and don't have like a lot of size. So, like, let's just go get someone who's actually good. But and again, I just don't know what he is as a player. But when I hear that he's competing with like Olamide Zacchaeus, someone whose name I've refused to learn because I don't need it. You know, that's a problem for me. Jeff, where are you at on Jahan Dotson? Should we just give it up?
Cliff Kingsbury is not a good football coach. I don't understand what's going on. Like, how did this happen? Like, and I've tried to say this on Twitter, and people, you don't know what you're talking about. He's a genius offensive mind. What are you talking about? He had Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, got himself fired at Texas Tech, and somehow was hired to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals in a baffling move. He was able to string out a couple years there where he had Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyler Murray was decent enough to give him a couple years. I don't understand why people think that Cliff Kingsbury is a good football coach. He's not a good football coach. And so that's where on Dotson, I mean, I think for his dynasty stake, for any of it, I hope he goes to a new team. I hope somebody takes a chance on him and throws him out there. I mean, go grab him, Buffalo. Like, you're looking at trying out all these wide receivers or whatnot. Try him in this system in Buffalo, or try to somebody else go out there and get him and rescue him, because I think it's more Cliff Kingsbury than Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, because, and again, I think we talked about it. Like, Jahan Dotson is not someone that's going to thrive in every system. And Cliff Kingsbury, you know what he wants? He wants athletes. He's like, okay, well, you're not the greatest player ever, and I certainly can't scheme you. So, like, you're just not for me. You know, to be honest, I think. It would be a great trade if the Broncos traded Jahan Dotson for Marvin Mims or something like that, you know, because like that's the player that Kingsbury wants. Like, can you just go really fast? Because I think that, you know, my scheme that I think is genius will get you open as long as you get there quickly when it's really not that good. So, Jeff, I'm here for that rant 100%. I'm always here for the Kingsbury hate. And again, it's one of those things where, like, some people said, like, give him to the 49ers. He's not a 49ers guy either because he doesn't run block. That's a thing. Like, you will not play for Kyle Shanahan if you can't run block, and that is not Jahan Dotson. So it's pretty sad. And basically what I'm saying, guys, is I'm still deep, and I'm not ready to put a bullet in my shares. That's it, guys. If you like the show, as always, like, subscribe. More importantly, go to footballguys.com/plans and subscribe there. Jeff writes there, I'm writing now. You guys who complain about my dynasty rankings, because of a graphic, I wrote a whole article where I break them down by tier and explain them and what you should do and give you actual advice. Moreover, I'm going to be giving you guys a college big board every month or maybe more often. I'm doing all this without Clayton's permission because I know that we're going to work it out, and that's just how I roll. Jeremy, you got anything to plug before we let you go?
Kind of the same stuff you just did, just at FTN. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at PopesFFH. I'll have a lot of stuff up there. Dynasty podcast for FTN Fantasy. That's on any platform you want. And then same thing, I'm going to have some college football content coming out throughout the season. Dynasty stuff, weekly rankings for redrafting, as well as Dynasty for your start sit problems. So everything and anything, football related, go ahead, give me a follow and check out the stuff over at FTN Fantasy.
Yep. We're in mid-season form, guys. Everyone's making the same content because it's exactly what you want.
Well, Dynasty show, we all love the film and we all love the college players. We're all making the same stuff.
Exactly, that's true. It's like once we get to week 4, we're like, okay, like nothing matters anymore.
Who cares? 2025 class, let's go.
Yeah, it's like I'm on to 2025. We're just Bill Belichick after week 4. But as always, guys, I'm Jagger, and then with me is Jeff Bell, and that's Jeremy Pope. We'll see where we're going to have John Bosch, and we're going to talk about a lot of deep cuts, but we're talking about our Dynasty risers, so we'll see you on the next one.